Well, good afternoon, friends. Bill here. Hope you're having a good week. We're having a good one here. Always lots of opportunity for gospel preaching. So, Lord willing, we're heading out to the Grey Cup in Toronto in a couple of weeks, November the 16th. Looks like there's going to be about 6 of us out there. There might be 6 Kenyans coming over. This is my first time to really try to. I wasn't trying to get them to come over, but they sent me a message and said they can make the trip. And so we're going to see if they make it. There could be an unusual experience there at the Grey Cup. Look forward to keeping you up to date. And tonight, Mike Ford in Phoenix is preaching at the World Series game there. I think that's game 4. And then he'll be there tomorrow because they're going to go to 5 games at least. And so thank you, Mike Ford, for preaching there. He's just telling me about an event, I think down in Tucson, some sort of Burial for the Dead event where they have some sort of, I think it's an Indian celebration and some sort of mass ceremony for praying for dead people, something like that. So I'll keep you tuned. If you live down there in Phoenix or Tucson or somewhere down there, it's next weekend, not this weekend, but next. Then just plan on going and preaching with Mike. Well, today I'm excited. We're me on the Sports Fan Live, and Josh was a Super Bowl team leader again this year, and we're going to hear his story about how he got, in essence, converted into open-air gospel ministry and his experience with the Super Bowl, and then this year as well. So let's bring him on and see what we can learn here. Josh, how you doing?
Hey, fabulous. How are you?
You're good. Can you hear me okay?
Yeah, I can hear you great.
Fantastic. Well, cool. So, well, tell me, I remember now where we met. You and I met. I came down to Beeson Divinity School, and I think we did this once or twice. We had a booth over there and just hanging out where the students are. And David Day asked you to come over. Remember that?
That's right. Yeah, it was. Yeah, it was good. Yeah, I think I'm wondering if we met before that, but we definitely met at the Beeson for sure. Yeah.
What year
was a camel? There was a camel out in the foyer. Do you remember that? There's some kind of they were doing some event and there was a camel. I don't know. It was weird. I thought maybe you brought it along. Yeah, it was like a live petting zoo or something. I don't know. It was weird.
Was this an evangelism gimmick they had going on?
It must have been, yeah.
So how did you meet David? Now, see, that's David I won't tell you. You know he's got like a stage name, don't you?
What is that? What's his stage name?
I think we started calling him Raccoon Ice or something like that. He was eating those raccoons for a while. Do you remember that?
Possums.
Possum, whatever he was doing. So Possum Ice, something like that. We came up with another the other day. I won't say any of it. So how did you meet David?
So David, I met through. Let me see. I'm trying to recall. I think I know he was doing the abortion ministry, and I was looking for just outlets to get involved in the open air world. And somehow I came across his name. I don't know, maybe from Living Waters or from Sports Fan Outreach. I'm not sure exactly, but somehow we got connected, and I drove down there. And I think the first time we actually met was with the Auburn games, one of the Auburn games there. And so I met him there and just kind of got to know him. I think that day he was by himself. And so I drove down, and I live in Birmingham. So I drove down, met with him, and we evangelized a little bit. And the rest is kind of history. Just kind of got to know him. I was going to those games pretty regular, a good bit, and just saw the potential there and thought that was really cool, and just got connected. And then I ended up going to the Super Bowl. I think, what happened after that? So I went to several home games that year in Auburn.
Okay.
Right. And then there was the Birmingham Bowl, and Paul Harvey, Al Baker, Eric, some of those guys were there. So I met them, and that was I'm pretty sure that was the fall. That might have been the following year, but they came down, and so I kind of connected with them. And then was the New Orleans deal? Was that the national championship? It was New Orleans.
Right. That was the basketball Final Four.
No, this was football.
Oh, really?
This was a football deal. Yeah, it was in the house down
Yeah. Sure.
Was that New Orleans? I mean,
Yeah,
Louisiana and
yeah.
Clemson or something?
Oh wow, it's
Something like
probably
that.
Clemson and was it Clemson, Alabama, or Clemson and Ohio
Might have
State?
been. It was LSU was there. I know that because
Yeah.
remember they were going. It was such a huge deal that all the LSU fans were there.
Is that when they
So I'm
won?
pretty sure that might have been in January.
Yeah, it's
But
when
I'm thinking that might have been the following year. But anyway, it kind of runs together.
they.
But yeah, and then that was the year the Super Bowl was in Atlanta, I believe.
Okay.
And I didn't make it to Atlanta. I wish I would have. That would have been great. But then, so then I started doing some of the Auburn games with David, and we did some of a couple of Alabama games, and then I did the Super Bowl in Miami.
Gotcha.
So I rode down. We got some of the Alabama contingent, got a bus and little van, and picked us up. And I felt like it was presidential, man. This giant bus pulls up. It was nice. So we drove down to Miami and then came back. That was really cool. It was a good experience.
So you met David. In all seriousness, I mean, time, but you met David. You saw what's going on? What did you? Well, I'm gonna ask you, what did you think? Then I'm gonna ask you, why were you interested in this to start with? So, what did you think when you saw him? Saw the work.
So the first time. So I kind of it was kind of what I expected. I don't know if I had seen some videos or maybe some photos, but it was basically what I had expected about, there's a guy there. I think he was by himself that day. I'm pretty sure. And so, we just I was passing out tracts, and I'm pretty sure I might have preached a little bit that day. Maybe, I don't know. Hopefully there's no video of it. It's probably pretty bad. But yeah, so I preached a little bit, but just had what happened several years ago, just to kind of jump ahead, several years prior to that, I had, well, had gotten into the Living Waters deal maybe about 10 years prior to that or so. And so I just kind of had this desire to share the gospel with people, and was looking for resources, and came across them, like Living Waters, like so many people do, and kind of got involved with that. And so I was doing one-on-one and that kind of thing. But I had this desire to open air, and just thought that was a really great way to reach people, and just, was drawn to that. So I think that kind of led to connecting with people. And that's kind of how I somehow got involved with David Day. And then he was doing some of the abortion ministry, and I went down a couple of times just to kind of check that out. But obviously that's a lot different. But I saw the sports thing as a really good opportunity to see lots of people, festive environment, people coming and going. And so when I went down to the Auburn game, I had been to Auburn games in the past, been a while, but so I kind of had an idea of what to expect. But it looked like a great field, so to speak, to go and share the gospel. So that was really kind of a draw to me to kind of be involved with that. And so I think the biggest thing for me was I didn't know anyone in the open air world, other than, some people I didn't really know, or I'd seen on videos or something. So I didn't have any connections with people. So when I got with Sports Fan, that really kind of connected me with local guys, or guys somewhat closer. And that really helped me kind of, as opposed to just, because I had never really done much open air preaching. I did a little, maybe like 3 times, literally. And so it wasn't like I had experience with it. So that helped, knowing someone like a David, and then getting to the games, kind of, helped, because you got a lot of opportunity, lots of people coming by, lots of interactions. So that really, that was really kind of the ticket for me. So I really thought that was a great, great opportunity. So once I got connected and then started meeting guys, and I felt more comfortable. So that's really kind of helped with that.
So, I mean, what in you clicked one day? You went to bed one day, and the next day you woke up and said, I'm interested in doing this. What happened?
Yeah, it's a good question. So I think for me, as I was around that 30-year mark, I really was kind of looking at my life and saying, I don't want to waste my life, basically, is really what it boiled down to. I don't want to miss out on an opportunity, there are people dying all around me, and I'd known some people that had died and things like that. And I just kind of, as I was just one day just started thinking about these things, I'm like, man, I'm 30 years old, and my life's going by pretty quick. I don't want to waste my time, So I had this burden, really a burden to share the gospel with people, a real burden to see lost people saved, to make an effort for the kingdom, so to speak. And it was really more about, am I utilizing my time wisely as a believer? I could die tomorrow and that's it, And so it was more about, hey, I want to maximize the time that God's given me. And so I just had this desire at that point to share the gospel, to learn how to, talk to people about Christ. And there's some other things that led me down that road, but it was more about just a desire. I remember the first time, one of the first people I shared with was in Home Depot, as a matter of fact. And this guy I was talking to, and I had just done some of the Living Waters, I'd watched some of those videos and that kind of thing. This has been a long time ago. And I just remember thinking, you need to put up or shut up. That's really what it boiled down to me. It was put up or shut up. And it was one of those things where, you're talking about wanting to reach people, talk to people, but you're not, there's people standing around us. And this man walks right up to us, kind of like a burly looking guy. And I had one of my daughters with me, and he just starts talking to me, like just random, just out of the blue, just like starts
Never
walking
to you, right?
What's that?
So, like it never happens to you like that,
right?
Like a experience,
yeah. It was one of these divine encounter type deals, And so he just starts talking, like really walks up. I'm in the lumber. I'll remember exactly where I was at, and my daughter's there, and this guy walks up, and I had this, hey, I need to share the gospel with this guy, and I'm like, no, I don't want to,
Right.
And so so he's talking, and I'm thinking, like, how can I make a run for this type deal, And so I started to walk off. I was like, okay, good to talk with you. So I walked off. I went around the corner, and that's when it was like, I had this thought. I was like, are you kidding me? Like, you want to share the gospel with somebody, and there's a guy right here. You can't even talk to him. So I turn around and I go right up. And this was before I had, oh, by the way, this was before I had gotten Living Waters. This was before I had yet watched a video on evangelism or anything. So I turn around and I go right back to the guy, and he's standing in the exact same spot. It was bizarre. He's standing in the exact same spot. And I start talking with him. And that was like the first time I'd really shared, like intentionally, like where I had gone somewhere to share the gospel. So that kind of kick-started that, as I had this desire to share the gospel. And I remember that guy specifically. And then after that, I think I got into the Living Water stuff. And then several years later was more about the open air kind of thing. That didn't come instantly. It was more like, hey, I saw videos of you guys and others doing, and I was like, wow, that's really pretty cool, and the historical nature of open air. So that was really what kind of led me down that road.
So what did the guy say? Did he say?
So it's interesting. The guy, something was wrong with his arm. I remember specifically, he had some kind of, and he goes, man, I've got this flesh-eating disease on my arm. And I'm like, really?
You're going to die.
And he's basically, he was telling me they'd gotten rid of it, but they had to carve part of his arm off, basically.
Whoa.
He'd fallen into some, I don't know. It was a weird story, but so I said, well, what would have happened to you if you'd have died? Just like that.
Yeah.
And the blood drained from his face, and he's like, oh, I don't know. And he kind of, as I start sharing with him, and I'm sure it was a disaster of a conversation from my end, but but the guy tears up on me, and I'm like, whoa, like, this wasn't really what I was expecting, And so, and I think I ended up praying with the guy, and he didn't live far from my church. And I was like, hey, you need to read your Bible and that kind of thing. But it was just one of those conversations. It didn't really, I wasn't expecting him to engage with me the way he did. And when I just started talking to him, he just started matter-of-factly telling me, all these things. And I was raised in the church and all, those things we hear so much. So that was really the first kind of encounter where, I kind of felt, hey, a love for this to learn more. And, as I'm learning, continuing to learn. And so, and then kind of to also just encourage others to be involved and share the gospel too. That's kind of part of it as well.
I can remember when I was in Atlanta and just getting started. And anyway, long story short, went to this place to pass out some tracts, and it was like the most exhilarating experience probably to that point. Like I got in the car, I was just breathing heavy. You're just so wound up about it, but it
Yeah,
was a good thing. That's what it sounds like with you. That's why I'm saying that. Like it was a good experience. It went well, and it compelled you to go back. Right. That's my point.
absolutely. Yeah, you know what? One thing about, of course, my open air. The first time I open aired was. I don't even really remember it, to be honest with you. My brain, I don't know where it went, but it went out in left field. I don't have much of a brain, but it definitely went out in left field. But what surprised me the first few times I engaged with someone was their willingness to engage and discuss these things.
Right.
Christian society and public secular society tells you, oh, we're not supposed to talk about these things. And that's just not biblical. And so, but people are willing to engage.
Right.
That's what's so great about it, is they're willing to talk to us. They're willing to, engage and ask questions and challenge. And so that's what's exciting about it, is that if Christians will just engage with people, they'll talk, and they have an opinion on the matter. So we should really be engaging and, seeking to speak with them about these things.
When you hear enough stories, enough testimony stories, then you start to see that this kind of stuff is it's not a straight line. There's a lot of ways it unfolds, and you hear some really crazy. I remember this one guy, Ted. That's Ted's last name in Atlanta. Ted was like the chairman or president of the Atlanta Business Bureau, Atlanta Visitors Bureau, whatever it's called. He's from Los Angeles, so he was high up in the city. Anyway, so he was telling a story about, I think he had some, I think a Jewish friend or something. And in his early stages of his salvation, he was trying to witness, and they got into a fight with his buddy, and he had the Bible, and he just like slammed it into his buddy's chest or something and said, I don't know what he said, real obviously unorthodox, but the guy got it, read the Bible, and got saved. So these crazy stories, you realize it's not a classroom, where you're going through a checklist. And
that's right.
I don't know if it gives me a lot of hope. Like, just the whole idea that it gets communicated to us in a church setting is the exactness of it, but it's not an exact interchange. And which is really my point. When you see it's not an exact interchange, and that more than likely you're going to have some legitimately human encounter with somebody, learn something about them, then it does take some of the pressure off. You agree?
Yeah, absolutely. I think too is, as bad as some of my encounters have been over the years, it's like you can't really mess up
Right.
the Lord's, because God's saving, right?
Right.
He does the saving, and you don't know how many other people have been in before you or after you.
Right.
But we've just got to open our mouths. And I think if we talk, now we can learn, obviously we want to learn as much as we can, but I think the idea that we're going to mess something up is, if we're just obedient, and the Holy Spirit will work, and the gospel is an easy thing to understand, in some senses to explain. In other senses, maybe not is what I mean easy, but you know what I mean? It's there's no exact formula to where if you say this and do this, that person's going to get saved and they're going to repent and believe, and so we're called to be obedient. I think that's kind of the biggest thing too for me, is just to open my mouth, take the time to speak to these people. Hey, these are human beings, they're souls there, and engage with them, ask them a question, or just, hey, what do you think about that? And that really has led to a lot of conversations, just to say, hey, well, what do you think about that? What are your thoughts on this?
Yeah.
And they'll tell you, right? And so that's really the best thing, is just to engage with people. I think that's the biggest thing.
That's another part. We have, of course, you hear those stories too, and somebody was telling a witnessing story, and so their friend asked a question, and they told them everything they knew about the Bible in about 30 minutes. The Bible dump, and that's not really what you're trying to accomplish. You're really trying to draw them out. What do you believe about this? And then you sort of counterpunch it back. Is a way that really again takes the pressure off. So tell me, but back to the open air preaching. What
Mhm.
happened? What you didn't when you woke up and said, "I want to check this out." You didn't go, "I don't want to do this. That's too much."
Well, part of me, what's funny is part of me wanted to do it. The other part was scared stiffless. Right. I mean, I just I did the Living Waters thing, I think maybe I don't remember the exact year, but and so the goal was, hey, I'll go and learn to do this there type thing. And so, but it went away for a little while. And so that I was like, oh, okay, well, I don't have to worry about it now. I'll just put it on the back burner. But I still knew, and I saw videos, and so I was still learning. I was still doing the one-on-one and kind of engaging with people in tracks, passing out a lot of tracks and things. But just breaking that sound barrier was something that I had a desire to do for some reason. I don't know exactly why. But I think the more I read scripture and, where Paul and Jesus are speaking to these mass groups of people, I just had this desire to do that for some reason. So I remember the first time, I open aired, and it's kind of a blur specifically, but I remember a guy walked up with a bike. He was on a bicycle, and he like walks up and is standing like right next to me. He's just kind of looking at me like this, you know. And so I remember that specifically. So I kind of get off the box, so to speak, and I was, my head was swimming, and I was just like, oh, I'm so thankful that's over. And then once I got out past that, it was great. It was more of that was a weight lifted off my shoulders. But it's funny that like the second time I went, I don't even think I could remember John 3:16. I mean, it's just I think I mangled part of it. I mangled two words, two verses together, and I was just like, oh, okay. So that's when I understood, hey, there's more to it, right, than just freestyling and just getting up there. But I think that was a good learning experience, just those first few times to try to, um, try to understand that there's more to this than just standing up and being loud, right? There's the prayer, there's the scripture that you're going to use. There's the engagement aspect and those kind of things that I continue to learn. But yeah, so I had that desire to do that, and then there was a period of time where after I went those first few times that I didn't get back up, and then I think in Auburn might have been one of the first times that I'd done it kind of locally. And so
Gotcha.
I was at that Auburn game, and so I preached a little bit there, and I was like, okay, well, these people aren't going to kill me, and I'm going to survive, and you know,
Right.
uh, all those things that are going through your head, and hey, who am I going to see? That was the thing that I really dealt with. Who am I going to see? Who's going to walk past here? And I got some of those, right, where they're looking up and they're walking past you, and they're kind of, as they walk by, you know what I'm talking about, right? And so that helped, as somebody says, that's a flesh killer, right?
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
And so that's that kind of, and I've had those thoughts before, but as we mature spiritually, I think that, you know, and the more we do it, it becomes more natural. But yeah, so those first few times, and that was great. Just afterwards, I remember being physically tired, but just kind of spiritually excited at the same time.
So you were working in the cable business when you started.
Yeah,
I
it
was going to
was.
ask, did you see? I was going to ask you if you saw anybody from that business.
Yeah. So
What happened?
I didn't. I'm trying to think here. I know some voices had come around the office because, as a matter of fact, I had given somebody a gospel tract in the office, and I basically got called into HR about it. And actually, that was it. We were off site shooting like a video for somebody, and it was after hours. And I asked this guy was a Mormon, and I asked him, I was like, "Oh, so you're a Mormon, right?" And he goes, yeah. And I was like, tell me about that. So he tells me all about he gives me his testimony, right? So I asked him, I asked him those questions, and then I shared the gospel with him. And we kind of went back and forth, and I was like, hey, it was good talking with you. And he's like, yeah, I enjoyed it. Well, the next day I didn't think anything about it, but my boss calls me at 5 o'clock and says, hey, are you going to be in the office tomorrow? I was like, well, yeah, of course I'm going to be in the office. He's like, all right, thanks. And that was it. I was like, something's weird about that. So he calls me in his office, and the phone rang, and it was somebody on the other end. I had no idea who it was, somebody from like a corporate deal. She's like, well, I guess he's in there then. I was like, who? So I like throw my hands up, and he's just looking down like this. And so anyway, nothing really happened about it. They just asked me, and he had went and complained
Really?
after the fact. Yeah. And he avoided me for weeks after that, but I was always friendly, like I'd never let on. And we actually kind of became friendly. We kind of talked more after that, down the road months later. But that was kind of, as I started thinking about these things, I was like, hey, one of these days it may be somebody in the business or whatnot, but I don't recall seeing anybody, but they may have walked by and just totally ignored me, which is very likely. So I don't recall seeing anybody from the company there.
That's cool. All right, so you started preaching. You want to start preaching. You met David Day and preached some of the Auburn games and joined up with Paul at the bowl and stuff. So what were you thinking? Like, were you thinking, where's this lead to, or is this exciting, or like what was going on there?
Yeah, I just thought that, I was really, I guess, excited about that so many people were coming through at one given time. That was one of the things I liked about it, was that there's so many people coming through. These people are in a festive, they're in a pretty good mood, right? And there's a lot of opportunity here to get the word out, the gospel out. So I was excited. And then I think, I don't know if it was that year. I think it was the following year about the Super Bowl, but I could be wrong. But then there were no more football games. It's like the season was over.
That's true.
So I was like, oh, man. So we started going to the local baseball games here. We did a couple of those. And that was kind of, so it's kind of started going and doing that. And then, we looked forward to the fall coming back around, and trying to think what other events we might have done. I think I went down and did a couple of bowl games. But I just really liked the bowls, and I liked the football games because there's so many people coming through. And so that was exciting for, hey, we're going down for this time. There's going to be some other guys there, and it's a great opportunity to get tracts out, to talk to people, to get the gospel out. And so it was just, I thought it was great. I had a great time doing it. It was a lot of fun, and still have a good time doing it. It's just one of those things that it's hard to really explain unless you've kind of done it, And so, especially when I was new to it, I was nervous driving down, right? I was excited and nervous at the same time, but getting down there and then prayer, having your prayer time, leading down there, I'm like driving, I'm like, oh, I'm praying, oh Lord. But then getting down there and on the, once you get on the sidewalk, once you get on the street, the Lord gives you boldness, and, you hear the preaching. So I was walking up, sometimes I could hear the preaching, from where they were at in Auburn there at Toomer's Corner. And I could hear the preaching, and I was like, oh yeah, and I'd see all the people kind of going by. And so that was really cool to see the people kind of coming and going and, bustling about, and all the noise that's going on with the game day atmosphere is cool, and so it's just, it's a lot more fun than other things, maybe like the abortion ministry, which is very difficult, that's tough. Things where the people aren't festive, but in the sports games, they're in a good mood. They'll engage with you, that kind of thing. So it's been a good time.
Along the way, before we talk about the Super Bowl, you met Al Baker, right? How did that happen? And
yeah, the first time I met Al was at that bowl game.
Okay.
And then several years back, we kind of got connected we did a, abortion thing, I think. which was really one of the first times. And then we did some outreach locally here in Birmingham. We had the World Games. I know you came down, and a few other guys came down for that. And we went to some of the baseball games here. Went over to Atlanta. I'm assuming that's the national championship. I could be wrong. And so it's one of those things where we tried to just connect and get out. Of course, he does a lot more open air stuff, but yeah, we connected locally and a couple of other things.
Did you learn's not the best word, but since he was pastor most of his career, what did you sense or learn from him that you weren't really getting from everybody else?
Yeah. So I think his. I think what I liked about him, I remember one of the first times I saw him. Well, not there at the Birmingham Bowl, but there at the Birmingham was the World Games. Just the listening to him on the text that he was using specifically, and just kind of his. There weren't a lot of people milling about, and the way that he was preaching, I think, as if there was 1,000 people there. I thought that was interesting, engaging with the way that he had kind of approached that. In Alabama, and the Alabama games, I noticed that too, where he's kind of engaged. I mean, the way he was kind of preaching and speaking. So I thought that was kind of interesting. So it's a different, just a different kind of style, I guess you could say. But yeah, I thought that was cool.
He definitely does a little bit different. Well, that was cool. Yeah, we had a good time. Mike was there for the World Games and Robert, and so that's a great setup down there. The city has a good environment for big events. So
yeah, we had a good time. We brought our, I think you might have met one of my daughters was with us there. I don't know if you remember, but I think they called you Cowboy Bill because you had your hat on. But yeah, it was, and so that was cool. So we, I brought them a few times just to pass out tracts and that kind of thing, and they kind of enjoy it, and that was a good environment for that. So yeah, I think Paul and Frank and those guys came down one day too. We connected with them over there, so that was a good time.
pretty good. That was good. Before we move on from Auburn, you met Scott Roney, right? What do you think of Scott?
Love me some Scott, man. Scott's great. Yeah. Scott's quiet guy, right?
Yeah.
Until he steps up to preach. And then his whole persona seems to change. So that's cool. Yeah. Scott's a good guy.
Go ahead. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
I was gonna say, if you've seen him with, he has the pulpit down there in Auburn.
Yeah.
So
Did he tell you his testimony?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah.
Yeah, I'll just share real quick. This is another one of those crazy stories. So apparently Scott played baseball at Auburn. He was really good baseball in high school. He was a really good athlete. But was a drug use and all this and that kind of wrecked his career. So anyway, the drugs got the best of him. He's going to kill himself. He's driving down this road. He's going to drive in front of a truck and let the truck run over him. He's going down this road, and this little girl walks out in the street. You remember this?
Yeah.
So he pulls over and he gets the little girl and he walks her back in the house or towards the house. And the dad comes out. Turns out to be one of his high school classmates. His high school classmate, I can't remember his name, who was pastoring then, was a Jesus freak in high school basically, and always witnessed to Scott. And so they got reintroduced. But that's how Scott got saved, got his life saved. It's pretty amazing when you hear those kind of stories. I think the other thing, and that's. In that process, and we'll go and talk about Super Bowl, but is the work of God in these environments. I mean, it's really beyond what we consider. So those stories really, or someone else had a very similar story.
Well, his story too was where he was going to share his testimony, and there at Tumors.
Right.
He tells everybody. I think maybe was it a high school reunion or something? And he says, "Hey, I'm not going to that. I'm past all that. I'm going to share my testimony."
Right.
And he went and he waited, I think, for people to show up, and nobody showed up. And he got up and shared. But I think there was one guy that heard.
Yeah. Believe. Yeah.
That's that's really cool, just to kind of hear those the different testimonies from different guys of how the Lord works, and it's just really amazing.
Yeah, it gives us a lot of hope. Well, cool. The Super Bowl. So Miami was your first Super Bowl. What did you think when you got down there? Was that a completely new experience in terms of numbers of people, or what did you think?
Yeah, Miami was. Let's see, I'd done the well, that
Oh,
was the year before. Yeah, it was the thing in New Orleans. That was
yes.
crazy.
Yeah. Yeah.
The national championship. I mean, wow. That was really awesome. Just tons of people. Miami was cool too. I think it rained a good bit while we were down there. And but the people were still out and about. That was what I found fascinating, was that people are just kind of there for the event, and so we were down the first day. I think was downtown there by the hotel where all the celebrities, I guess, were, and but just the opportunity to be around the city, I thought was cool. The way you guys had it mapped out, where this team's going to be here and this team would be there, and so this whole city was blanketed. I thought that was really neat. Um, and just seeing all those guys in that room there where we were, that was cool. Well, there's about 100 guys down there for the
Makes
Miami
sense.
one,
Yeah.
and seeing all those guys, and the fellowship and the singing and the all that was really cool. Um, it's the first time being around that. I thought that was, and then the teaching was neat there too, just to have everybody there, and having the guys teach. So I just thought it was great. I mean, had been looking to connect with guys, in the ministry, open air world, evangelistic world. And then here's 100 guys that are get from over the country. So that was really kind of a very cool experience. I think it is for a lot of new guys, especially. You get in that room and you're like, whoa, where'd all these guys come from? You know? And so that's really encouraging too, I think, for somebody that's new, to see that, to experience that, to witness that so many guys that maybe like them, that are in their own communities with their own guys preaching, and now everybody's here for one big event. I'd done, with in my cable world, I'd been around some sports events, and some big ones, and so I had kind of knew what to expect as far as the people go, but it was just so I knew that it was going to be like a festive environment, and kind of, and everybody's coming and going. So I knew that was going to be the case. But then, the having all the preaching going on too really was, I mean, it makes sense. So many people hear the gospel there,
Did you go to South Beach?
I did. Yep. Yeah. We, it was interesting. I was going to say a lot of Lamborghinis drove through there. Like, man, what do these people do for a living here? But yeah, that was neat experience. I think we took the school bus over, and I remember sitting on the school bus and just saying, "Oh man, all these guys, we're going to be all preaching, all over the place." And but that was cool. That was it was a good. Miami was a neat town, spread out differently, but it's a neat spot.
So the next year in Tampa, you came to Tampa. How was that?
Tampa was good. Was that the camp? Yes.
Tampa Bay camp. Yeah, right there.
Yeah, that was I liked that spot too. That trying to think, we were out at Clearwater. We were Ybor City.
Yeah.
Ybor City was a great place to preach, man.
Yeah.
Ybor City was one of those places where it was just wall to wall. Of course, you've got COVID going on, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
And those people didn't care. They were, because that was the Tampa Bay was the home team, and they ended up winning.
Yeah.
But the people there were just, there for the party. And it was, Ybor City was a great place. Out on the beach was good too, out at Clearwater. But Ybor City was jamming, man. It was like being in New Orleans again. So that was a good spot. Yep. And then LA was after that, right?
Right. LA.
And LA was cool. I wouldn't recommend riding with David if he's driving. Just kidding. But LA was great, just because we hit Hollywood while we were down there. We had gone to a couple of different spots there. And then around the stadium, of course, it's similar to it is in Las Vegas, where the stadium is there, and then, you're just in the neighborhood, basically. So, but, Los Angeles was a neat, got to eat In-N-Out Burger too. I like some In-N-Out Burger. But LA was really cool. Just, anytime if you can go over to Hollywood and see the stadium, that type of thing, it's kind of a cool. Hollywood's obviously one of those iconic spots. It's similar to Las Vegas, right? It's just people have an idea about Hollywood and have an idea about Las Vegas. So that's what's kind of appealing about those kind of places, that it brings a lot of people there.
It's a good one for it. Yeah, every city has a little bit different flavor to it, doesn't it?
Yeah. Yeah. Phoenix was different. We were there earlier in the summer. We went over to the baseball stadium, for the scouting. But there were tons of people down there. Just, man, right outside of that NFL experience, which is, I know you guys try to to capitalize on that. And so, man, the people streaming into that NFL experience is, wow. I mean, it's massive amounts of people coming through there, so that's, just out of the blue in the downtown, you wouldn't expect it all. But then all of a sudden down there by the NFL experience, just people coming and going. And so, yeah, but every city's got a little bit different, different feel, a different flavor for sure.
Did you grow or change or through those 4 or 5 years, or get more
I think so. I
confident?
hope so. I hope so. Obviously, we should all still obviously keep training and studying and that kind of thing. But I think so. I think the more times you can get up and the more times you can engage, you should grow, and see where your weaknesses are, and what you can work on, and how you can engage with someone differently, and a lot of times after the fact, I'll take mental notes and say, well, he mentioned this, and maybe I need to look into that, or what could I say, or what's a good question to ask. So you should build on these things, I think, and anytime you're engaging or evangelizing with someone, because you're going to hear something probably you've never heard before, even if you've been doing it for a long time. So you just kind of put those things in your arsenal, and I think the prayer time, I think, is huge too. I know we focused on that this year, but I think that's really an important thing that's kind of helped me, really, just to focus that time in prayer weekly. And just the idea that this isn't something you want to just show up and nonchalantly do. We don't want to just all fly out to Las Vegas, just hit the streets, right? And I think the spending time in prayer leading up that's been really a thing that I think's very important, and I've really understood that the last several years, especially with the amount of days you're out there, 3 days, plus days. So I think that's been a thing that's really helped me kind of grow spiritually, is that prayer time, dedicated prayer time. Yeah.
So what's been the biggest difference between going and being a team leader? Talk about that.
Let me see. Well, I think it's, now if I know you, it's different, right? But if it's somebody's new, that you're, you're getting to know them, even though you've been on the prayer call. So you're getting to know the guys and kind of feeling them out. But I think it's more about just kind of coordinating. I want to make sure that everybody gets as much preaching time as possible, So getting guys up on the box if they're there, that's what we're there to do, is get them on the box. So if somebody's never preached, or they've never given out a tract, or which you have some of those every year, right? They've never given out a tract, or they've never engaged. Like, hey, what's your goal like for this? You've never evangelized. What's your goal? I want to give out a gospel tract. I'm like, okay, take this tract in your hand. Okay, hold your hand out. And we did that last year. It's like, hold your hand out. And he held his hand out, and somebody walked by and took the tract out of their hand. I was like, hey, man, you met your goal, your first goal.
Right.
It's to kind of encourage them, I think the other thing is to encourage the guys, and we should be encouraging all the Blip brothers. But that's a big thing, is just to kind of encourage them and help them, once you get on the streets, hey, here's what the mission is, here's what the goal is, here's where we're going to be, and let's have a plan. There's a method to Bill's madness, so to speak, right? I learned that was one of the first things. I think I remember Paul, or you might have told me, I don't remember, one of those first big outreaches, either that national championship in New Orleans or one of the other ones, where you were saying, hey, here's what we do. And Paul may have said this too, Paul Harvey, but they kind of explained, like, hey, you've got a preacher, we've got this gospel net, right? You got a guy on one side handing out tracts, you got a guy next to the preacher, you got a guy over here, so that they kind of flow through this net, and they're going to pick up the gospel. And so I started noticing that, I think in Miami there. It might have been one of the outreaches. So I started noticing, I'm like, oh, wow, that really is. So if somebody's walking up, the first guy that asks for a tract, no, they hear the preaching, they keep walking, right? And what they do a lot of times on the back end, they'll take a gospel tract from the person to see what's this really all about here, or they'll stop and engage after the first guy a lot of times. And so that gospel net was, that really made a lot of sense to me. And seeing too, I think you mentioned this, but it might have been somebody else, but having a group of guys versus having some guy that's just, by himself, having a group of guys coordinated. Hey, there's something to this. There's a group of guys here that are doing this. I think that speaks volumes to somebody who's kind of walking through, especially if they go for blocks, right? And they've hit multiple different preachers or guys engaging them. Last year, I know you guys have heard it multiple years, but last year me and Tom, I think, were walking, and there was a guy in front of us and behind us, and we just walked past Bobby and Joe, I think it was, and they were preaching, and the guy's like, man, all these preachers, man, they must all be together or something. I don't know. That was kind of funny, but I know you guys have heard that for several years now, and so that's really kind of, I think, what the Super Bowl does is it puts a lot of boots on the ground, so to speak, in different strategic places that gets the gospel out. And so you're coming through this giant net, so if you walk a few blocks, you're liable to engage multiple guys. So I think I noticed that one of the first big outreaches, and it made more sense to me. They're everywhere. That's right. So that's kind of the mentality is we see that, sadly, with the Jehovah's Witnesses. Yeah. Last year in Phoenix, that was the most Jehovah's Witnesses I'd seen. I mean, they were on every corner, it seemed like. And so, that's the way it should be with the gospel proclamation too. And so I think that really, I think that's what the goal is, right? I mean, you correct me if I'm wrong, that to have the city covered, right? I mean, is that the goal?
Yeah, there's a visual impact with people. I mean, people are impacted visually, and you have, 8 or 10 teams of 10 that gets their attention. Like, there's something going on. What are you guys doing down here? That happens a lot.
Yeah.
That's the goal. And then, I think, more people, I think, the other part of that is, whether it's a team or 10 teams, people, there's some comfort level in multiple people being on a team versus one, dude with his hair on fire. That guy, he's unapproachable. But you have 5 or 10 guys out there, and everybody's acting pretty normal, like we talked about today. And it's easy for somebody to walk up and say, hey, what are you guys doing here? That's, that invites that interchange. So I think that really, that's part of it too.
Yeah. Yeah.
Most definitely. So, yeah, cool. So like a couple of questions will be done here. So as a team leader, you're talking to a new person coming to the Super Bowl. What are you going to tell them to be especially ready for?
I think specifically, this, this is kingdom work, right? And we're not resting in our own power. We're resting in the power of the Holy Spirit and the gospel. And so I think if somebody's never done it before, if they've never evangelized, hey, know what you're going to do, but rest in the gospel the power of God to salvation for all who believe. It's not you saving anyone. So you don't have to track down every guy on that corner, give a track out to every single person there, right? Just offer the tracks, proclaim, talk to guys, those kind of things. No sleep. Yeah. David, bring your earplugs, right? But I think that's the deal, is that you want to, trust the Lord and be faithful, and to open your mouth. And between now and then, study, right? Engage with people, and as much as you can. And when you get there, it's a whirlwind. So you got to make the most of the time that you get there, because we get there, Thursday, or the guys will get there Thursday, we'll check in, they'll wake up, go through breakfast, prayer, training, and then we're going to hit the streets. And then it's going to be Sunday at 4:30, right?
Right.
It goes by so fast. So make the most of the time. Like, sometimes I think new guys will kind of be off in the distance and kind of watching. Hey, just make the most of it, or listen to other guys. That's the other thing. Listen to guys that are preaching. If there's a guy preaching there and you're standing by him and you're new, listen to him. Like, what's he saying? Yes, that's right. Listen to what they're saying, and you get some ideas, right? How they're engaging. Watch how the different guys engage with people. That's one cool thing about, having guys, a team of 10, right? Where you're able to see different styles and different how people are engaging. If someone's standing there and they're having a one-on-one conversation, kind of listen in, like, what are they saying to these guys if they're new specifically? And that gives you some ideas. I know, like, if you hang around somebody long enough, you'll start to kind of pick up their traits. Hopefully they're good ones. But that's what I would recommend if they're new. Be prepared for just a really exciting opportunity, awesome time together with a bunch of guys. But make the most of the time that you're there, because goes by very quickly,
So why should someone, if they get invited to be on two different teams, why should they be on your team?
Because that's a good question. I was going to say, because I've got a nasty mustache, but I don't know if anybody.
Well, David's on your team. That would be one reason.
Yeah, that's right. Right. David's on the
nice
team,
over there.
and because he's there, everybody else needs to be on my team. We got a good mix of guys. I think, obviously all the guys are good, right? All the team leaders are good. I would just say that if they haven't registered, of course, today is the deadline for the discounted registration, right? So if they haven't registered, obviously they need to, you need to register to get the discount. But I think the Super Bowl in general is just an amazing opportunity in Las Vegas. I mean, let's talk about Las Vegas. How awesome is Las Vegas not built for this? I mean, Las Vegas it seems like one of those places that if there was ever a city built for open air preachers, right? Well, you'll probably put London as number one, right? I mean, yeah. I've never been to London, but Las Vegas, I would say, it's really built for evangelistic efforts, And so if you're looking for a great opportunity to get around guys, if you want to learn to open air preach, if you want to evangelize, Las Vegas is the place. It's going to be a great opportunity. I will say, I would say 99% of the people were not locals, right? They were all tourists. Everybody there's a tourist. And so they're there to have a good time. There's, they're going to be people there for the game, but also people that, just happen to be in Las Vegas at that time. So I think really, if you're wanting to do this work, this kingdom work, connect with other guys, the Super Bowl is really the place. It's really the place to be. And I think Las Vegas is going to be and this is the first Super Bowl that's been there, because they've only had a stadium. This is their first season, right?
A couple of years, I think.
Yeah. So, Las Vegas does have an appeal, right? It's called Sin City, but everybody just knows that it's this glitzy, glamoury kind of place. But it's really just tons of people on the sidewalk that are there, vacationing or whatever they're there to do. And so you correct me if I'm wrong here, but everybody was there, was in a pretty good mood. I mean, there weren't a lot of people mocking, I mean, I know we've been in the South at some of these football games, we've had more mockers, right? And more guys. So I think Las Vegas is a great, I mean, it's just, it's really built for, um, for us. And so I would just encourage somebody to take advantage of it. You're going to be on somebody's team. Maybe you're on mine, hopefully. But here's the deal. You're with a group. We were there in September, scouting it out. Not going to be as hot as it was in September. So we got that going for us. And I don't think, regardless of the day that you go there, it's going to be a lot of people on the streets, on the sidewalks. So it's just, how long is the strip? Is it a mile and a half or something like that?
Probably something like that. It's not real
Yeah.
long. The boulevard part right there is about a mile and a half. That's good. That's a good guess.
Yeah. So we were spread out a good ways. And so some people are coming out and they're just walking the streets. I mean, Las Vegas is like a big digital billboard when you look up, and then the sidewalks are just jammed with people, So I would say, come on out, sign up, get on the early registration, right? And save some dough. But it's going to be a good outreach.
I think one thing about Las Vegas, so those are good points, is that it's how we are just sort of flying under the radar, and like we don't get everybody's attention. And so obviously, in Vegas, we're just part of the scenery. We're not standing out, and that sense. And so I think people roll with it a lot better when we're just part of the scenery. Like New Orleans, we're just part of all the other things going on in New Orleans. So it's the same. I like that because then you don't have that sort of spotlight on. I think people give you a good read. I think when we were over there on that one spot over by the Paris balloon, they were giving good reads. That's what you want, a real genuine response. So,
well, I'll say too, we had some encouragement from people.
Yeah, sure.
Thank you guys for being here and that kind of thing. It's a cleaner city than I think maybe a lot of people think. It's not maybe what it was 20, 25, 30 years ago. It's really kind of a different vibe. I mean, it's Las Vegas, but it's not like a New Orleans at all. I would say it's really kind of a different. I think they've maybe tried to clean it up. I don't know, but but it's just a great opportunity. And like you said, we didn't have any problems on the street there on the sidewalks. We had amplification, but it wasn't anything where people were saying, "Hey, you can't be here." So it was a good, it's a really good opportunity there.
Yeah, and all the visual stimulation, if you haven't been, you might think is out there. It's really not there. There's just one at night is when a little bit, like a couple of trucks came out, but it wasn't like it's nothing bad. It's nothing distracting. So that is surprising. If you haven't been there before, you might think otherwise. And so it's good. Yeah, and I think I was surprised how busy it was just on an everyday basis. It's one of the best cities, apart from London. I would say Las Vegas and Toronto are probably the best other city I've ever been to for constant foot traffic. So it should be good.
Yeah.
All right, man. Well, good job. Any passing final thoughts?
Well, I was just going to say, I'm going to be talking about Gawain Kirkham as out of London, mid 1800s guy. And so we'll be talking about him, just a real encouraging, evangelistically minded man that was influenced by open air preacher. So when he had a young age, saw an open air preacher, and he just thought that was very interesting and was just kind of attracted to that. So really, it does a lot of what's cool about this guy is they were, passing out tracts at races, festivals, events. So very similar to kind of the Super Bowl outreach and others. So looking forward to seeing all the guys in the Super Bowl in February. So hope everybody can make it.
Cool. All right, Joshua. Good to be with you. Thanks so much. Thanks everybody tuning in. It's been a good afternoon, and we'll talk to you soon. Have a good day. Well, y'all, that was great. Joshua Tubbs does a great job, and he's down in Birmingham, Alabama, and Those guys preach a lot. So it's amazing where God raises people up. You've got Frank Rollberg and the guys up there in the Huntsville, North Alabama, Florence area, and David Montgomery and Joshua and some Al in Birmingham area. So it's amazing how and where the Lord's raised people up. So thanks, Joshua. Listen, the Super Bowl, it should be on this link. Let me throw that on there real quick before we get out of here. And then if you have not registered or haven't seen all the details, then click here and join us up there. February 8 to 11. February 8 to 11. It's possible, since David, if he's still on here, we might have some extra days added to the front end. We've had a preacher marathon a couple of times. We preach really from Friday to Sunday. I've got to get a little bit closer here, and we might go, say, Sunday to Sunday, something like that on this trip, because Vegas is so unbelievably good. Anyway, friends, listen, thanks a lot for tuning in. Have a great day. Or we'll see you in Las Vegas. Bye-bye.